Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Governor Lynn Rogers, and it's a pleasure to be here on my home turf. We just keep moving closer to my house. So we started on the east side earlier for a bill signing, and now we're just a few blocks away. But it's always great to be home in Wichita, and it's really great to be here for this event and for so many great people. I know we have a number of elected officials here. Our hosts for the county commission, there's several here, 4 or 5 of them. If you guys would stand, let's welcome them. Thank them for being here. We also have House of Representatives, Kansas House of Representatives, and Kansas Senators that are here. If they would stand or wave, we'd love to welcome you guys and thank you for being here. Well, it's great to be here, and particularly for the signing of this bill. Being able to expand the ability to vote is really an essential part of our democracy. And giving Kansans more ample opportunities to vote will really help us in everything that we do. What I'm pleased about is I think it can encourage and help people have their voices heard, and that's really an important part of our society. So I want to thank everyone who's worked on this bill. Senator Faust Godot, she's been very instrumental. Representative Carpenter, where's he? He's here in the back there. And then everyone here at Sedgwick County. I know it was part of the legislative initiatives very early. So your advocacy on this issue is very important. Our next speaker is also one who's worked very hard for this, and that's our election commissioner here in Sedgwick County, Tabitha Lehman. I know she worked tirelessly to make this a reality. So without further ado, I'm going to ask her to come up and say a few words. Tabitha?
I would like to second the welcome of everyone here. This is a lot of people. I don't know why I'm nervous about this. With everything else that I do, this has got me nervous. I would also like to extend our appreciation to Senator Faust Godot for all her work on this, and Representative Carpenter and all the legislators in this room. I would also like to thank the County Commission Board. They put this on their legislative platform. They put a lot of county resources towards making sure this happened, and that is great. But I would also like to acknowledge a special group of people who are in this room that are very special to me, and that is we have county clerks from multiple counties here. Could you guys stand for me? I warned you. I did warn you. These are election officials from other counties in the state. I know Rick Pifo from Harvey County was up there, I think, every single time I was up in Topeka testifying. Some of this legislation was also on the legislative platform or agenda for the Kansas County Clerks and Election Officials Association. So this is very important, I think, for voters to know that your local election officials were fighting for you as well, not just advocacy groups, not just legislators. So your election officials were fighting for your rights, too. And I think that's important for you to know that. There was really 3 pieces of legislation that was all bundled into Senate Bill 130, and so I kind of want to talk about those separately here for a second. The first part was just some cleanup that the election officials requested that just kind of cleaned up some other legislation that passed that made it easier for us to do our jobs, and that was really just more administrative. The second part, which is very important but isn't getting as much attention, is legislation that was passed to say that any voter who votes by mail, who their signature either does not match or they fail to sign, it is now a requirement for all election officials in the state to attempt to contact that voter to let them know that their ballot's being challenged and give them until the commencement of county canvassing to have that deficiency corrected. This was on the legislative platform of the County and Clerks and Election Officials Association. This was very important to us to get consistency across the state and to make sure that your ballots were counting. So I want to make sure I'm advocating for my colleagues as well, so you know that. This piece of legislation was very important because we've had some close elections and we will continue to have close elections, and it's important that we count every vote that is eligible to be counted, and we want to make sure voters know their rights. The next piece of legislation, which was kind of our baby, I guess we would say here in Sedgwick County, which is very near and dear to my heart, is the Vote Anywhere on Election Day, or as we call it in the industry, vote centers on Election Day. This is something that our office in Sedgwick County has actually been working towards for about 8 years. So we have to give the rest of the state a chance to catch up. There's nothing wrong. It's just we've been working towards this goal for about 8 years. And this was our first real step of getting the law changed, and the law is now changed. The next step is going to get the rules and regulations in place, and that's going to take some time, but we also need to know it took us 8 years to perfect it before we brought it up as a possibility, because we wanted to make sure we could do it first. So give everybody a chance. They're doing their jobs. It just is going to take a little time to do so. On that step 2, the Secretary Schwab has convened a working group of Kansas election officials, county clerks, election experts, and security specialists to assist in the drafting of the rules and regulations. We're actually going to start meeting later this month in that group. Secretary Schwab has made it clear that the security and consistency of implementation is very important to him in those rules and regulations, and I think we can all agree with him on that. I did want to ask respectfully that until we are at the point of implementation, that you still go to your designated polling place on Election Day, because we want to make sure you get the right ballot, and we don't want you to have to cast a provisional ballot. And lastly, I did want to just specifically point out, this was, as you can tell by who was getting credit and thanked for all of this process, this was truly a bipartisan effort. This legislation passed the House 119-3 and the Senate 38-1, and then, of course, was signed into law by Governor Kelly. So we are very excited about this, and we're very excited about all of the changes that are coming. And with that, I will introduce our next speaker. And forgive me, this is what I'm really nervous about. Pledging bipartisan leadership to rebuild Kansas, Laura Kelly became the 48th governor of the state of Kansas on January 14, 2019. Governor Kelly has made it her life's work to fight for children and families in her community, on the job, and as a fourth-term senator, and now as governor. She has been a leading voice in promoting healthy families and improving quality of life in Kansas through top-notch schools and communities. During her time in the Senate, Governor Kelly built a reputation as a no-nonsense leader who would work with both Republicans and Democrats to get the job done. As governor, Laura Kelly has prioritized fully funding public schools, expanding affordable health care, reforming the child welfare system, and growing Kansas economy in rural, suburban, and urban communities. Please join me in welcoming Governor Laura Kelly.
So, is this on? Okay, so exactly what we used to use in the Senate. So, and because I feel so at home in front of one of these, I'm going to now cede my time slot to Senator Faust Goudot, who would like to share some things with you.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today. And I wanted to first extend my condolences to County Commissioner Jim Howell of the passing of your mother. So sorry for that. Again, I want to thank the governor for signing the bill into law. As been said by our Commissioner Tabitha, the bill passed in the Senate 38-1, and in the House 119-3. Those bills were actually passed in the legislature on April 4th and April 3rd. I also want to make a point, and the governor, she knows I'm long-winded, so I brought a note with me here to also thank all the elected officials that are in the room and all the organizations that came up and testified for the legislation. I also want to recognize I've served as the ranking member on the Senate Ethics and Elections Committee for 10 years, and I've introduced legislation such as this in the past. And hearing from my constituents who work at the aircraft industry on the other side of town, and they live on the north side of town, they would tell me that they couldn't make it there in time to vote. So this legislation, Governor, is one of the most fundamental pieces of legislation. It's one of our most important rights that we have to ensure democracy. This will make voting easier, and so I really, really appreciate the Commissioner Tabitha's work. I also want to thank Jason Watkins. the lobbyists that came up and worked together with everyone. And as I said, I've introduced legislation like this in the past. However, I didn't want to introduce it as an individual bill. I wanted to introduce it as a committee bill so that we could all take ownership of this legislation. So I do want to recognize Senator Randall Harding. If you'll stand and just wave your hand, he is the vice president of the Senate Ethics and Elections Committee, so he had a major role in it. Already mentioned Representative Blake Carpenter, who is in the House on the Elections Committee in the House. But if I could have just all legislators that are here, raise your hand, because please do that, because none of this gets done in Topeka without the majority of the support. As was said, this was a bipartisan piece of legislation. I even remember on Government Day in Topeka, Commissioner Dennis and Howell and Lacey Cruz and others, they were in Topeka. And Jim Howell and I actually went to the chairwoman, Elaine Bowers, and said, everybody supports this legislation, so can we get a hearing? And so here we are today. This is a great day in Kansas. And again, Tabitha mentioned Senate Bill 129. I introduced that legislation also because during the governor's race, when votes were counted, the county commissioners, you guys, Tabitha gave you a stack of advance ballots that were mailed in. And I believe there were about 383 or 5 of them that she had to tell you guys. And I was in the room that day, and she said, "Commissioners, we can't count these votes." And I don't remember which one of you said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because the back of the envelopes are not signed." And so I remember looking over at County Clerk Kelly Arnold and saying, "What? We can't count these." And so that legislation derived from that of, we need to give people an opportunity to exercise their right to vote and their vote be counted. And this legislation here will do that. And again, just thank you so much for coming up to testify, and the governor for signing the bill, and for all of you being here today. It's a great day in Kansas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be here with you at the Sedgwick County Courthouse. I have never been in this building before, and so appreciate the invitation. And Tabitha, thank you for all the work that you did in getting this bill through the system. I know it's not easy. Over the past decade, we have seen countless efforts to make voting more difficult in Kansas, which has been a huge concern. Everyone's voice should be heard. It's essential to our democracy that all Kansans have the chance to vote in local, state, and federal elections. Senate Bill 130 requires our county election officials, at their behest, to attempt to contact every single voter who mistakenly submitted an advance voting ballot without a signature or did so without her or his signature on file. This way, the voter can make the necessary corrections and ensure that his or her ballot will not be thrown out. The bill also allows voters to cast their ballot at any polling place they choose, at the discretion of the local elected officials. This is so helpful for people who work far from home and can't make it to their assigned polling place before voting hours end. On behalf of the state of Kansas, I want to thank Senator Faust-Godot, Representative Carpenter, Tabitha, and everyone with the Sedgwick County Election Office for your work on this legislation. I also want to thank the legislature for fixing the filing oath office deadlines, which needed to be updated since local elections were moved to the fall 4 years ago. Thank you for all your work making our state a better place to live and work, and a place that makes the fundamental right to participate in our democracy available to all Kansans. And with that, I will sign Senate Bill 130.
Okay.
Okay, so we're all set, and I will sign Senate Bill 130 again.
Hey.
There we